live desktop is the main control room for your live production. In this video, we will look at the live desktop and cover setting up all of the inputs and outputs for the session. We will cover setting up to record the production and setting up the still image grabber. Finally, we will cover backing up and restoring a session. You are now looking at the live desktop. This is the control room for your live production. The interface is broken down into 4 sections. The dashboard along the top gives you access to many powerful features in the TriCaster. Just below is a fully configurable multi-viewer. The live control section features a video mixer and downstream keyers, and they're here in the center of the interface. And below that, the tabbed interface gives you access to the internal media players and the audio mixer. The dashboard is a set of controls along the top of the live desktop. It consists of the TriCaster menu, allowing you to eject removable drives, to access some interface options, and get to the online help. The online help selection shows QR codes that can be scanned with any smart device with a barcode scanner, and this will load up the user guides in that smart device. You can also exit the live desktop from this menu, and this will take you back to the Sessions page. Next is the message area. This is where important messages will show up during a live production. An example of this can be shown by hitting the Alt key and the B key on the keyboard at the same time. This will display the TriCaster's build number in the message area. Clicking the green box will remove the message. Next is the disk storage area, showing how much disk space is available for recording and how much switcher memory is available for transitions. Next is the workspace pull-down, allowing you to customize the main UI and the secondary multi-viewer, and we will look at this in detail in a moment. Next, you have the sharing panel. Remember, you must log in to social media sites from the Home or Sessions page before using this feature. The macro button also has a gear. The gear is to access the macro recorder, and the button is to only show the macros that you have selected as favorites. We cover this in detail in the macros section. Next are the streaming button and its configuration gear. Again, the gear allows access to the streaming panel to set up, and the button itself will start and stop the streaming process. Next is the grab and record section, and they work the same way, with a main button to use the feature and a gear for setting up the feature. There is also a production clock. This production clock's time is set by setting the Windows clock from the administrator panel. There's also a gear for setting up the clock and its options, and we cover that in detail later in this video. The multi-viewer in the main UI allows you to see the internal and external channels available during a live production. Now, by default, you have the switcher channels set up to monitor all 8 video inputs, the 2 network inputs, and internal media players, including 2 digital disc recorders and 2 graphics players, which are displayed here. You also have a monitor set up to show what is currently loaded into the main switcher's frame buffer. There are also large preview and program monitors so that you can see what's going out live and what will go out live if a transition is performed. Now, each one of these monitors represents a channel in the switcher that could be configured in some way. You can rename any button and any monitor on the interface to suit your production. Right-click on any monitor's title bar or any button in the switcher and select Rename. Setting the input name changes the label on the monitor, and changing the button label changes what's displayed on the button in the switcher. Remember, there's not much room on the button, so these names should be very short. When renaming the monitor, you could add a shot type or camera locations such as Don close-up or wide shot, so when looking at the input monitor, you can easily identify what and where that source is. This can be done for media players as well as live inputs. The default layout for the main multi-viewer shows you the 8 external sources and many of the internal sources available for the live production. You have the ability to configure any monitor to show any input or output of the TriCaster. Simply right-click on the monitor and you see a menu of selections for that monitor. It can be set to show any of the live inputs, any network input, any media player, any frame buffer, any mix effects bus, or any output. You can also load a custom image into the monitor, but this will only display that image in the multi-viewer's monitor, not on output. You also lose any proc amp or live mat controls when using a custom image. This is simply used to populate the multi-viewer monitor with an image if you need it. You can also put the production clocks into any monitor. The Overlays menu allows you to add overlays to the multi-viewer monitor that do not affect the output. These include a checkerboard for the background of a monitor that is displaying keyed content or content with an alpha channel. This is perfect when setting up a key using LiveMat. Let's load a green screen clip into the DDR. Now let's turn on LiveMat to remove the background. Right-click on the DDR monitor and select Configure. Go to the LiveMat tab and turn on LiveMat with this button. Close the configuration panel. Now right-click on the monitor again and go to the Overlays section and turn on Checkerboard. You now see a checkerboard in the background of the DDR monitor, but that monitor is a little small. You can get a larger view of any monitor by configuring the preview monitor to show that source. Mouse over the preview monitor and right-click and select Media Player DDR1. The preview monitor is now a DDR1 monitor. Notice the label and the controls at the bottom of the monitor. Each monitor has its own settings and is independent of any other monitor's controls, even if they are displaying the same source. Notice the checkerboard did not show up even though it was set up on the original DDR1 monitor. To set up checkerboard on this new DDR monitor, right-click on it and choose Overlay Checkerboard. This gives you a nice big view of the source being configured. You also have access to the DDR controls from this window or any window showing a media player. You also have access to the configuration panel for any source shown in any monitor. Right-click and choose Configuration to open the configuration panel for the source displayed in any monitor. Close the panel. There's also an overlay for Title Safe, showing you the area of the screen for titles to be visible at any resolution. There is a 4:3 overlay for standard definition productions and a center cross for alignment. All of these options are independently available for each source monitor, even if they are set to the same source. Right-click on the preview monitor again and change it back to Output Preview Monitor. None of these overlays appear on Program Out. Each multi-view monitor also has VU meters displayed showing the audio levels associated with that input. You can turn the VU meters for that input on and off here. This does not affect the audio. You can also turn on markers for tracking and hotspots, and these display options are used when setting up these features. You can also flip the monitor horizontally within the multi-view display. This is useful when using the monitor as a confidence monitor for the on-camera talent. As you mouse over any of the monitors, you will see the gear appear in the lower right corner. These gears appear all over the interface, and they are used to configure whatever they are associated with. A gear next to an input monitor will bring up the configuration panel for that input. The gear attached to an output monitor will bring up the output configurations panel. Mouse over the Camera 1 monitor and the multi-viewer, and a gear appears. Click on the gear. This brings up the input configuration panel for video input number 1. You can also double-click on the monitor to bring this panel up as well. From here, you can use the connection type pop-up to choose the type of video coming in on each input independently. If your input sources are synced or gen-locked, you can turn off frame sync for that input here. If you are not using gen-lock, leave frame sync turned on. Go ahead and bring in some video into a few inputs if possible. You can bring in a wide variety of formats and resolutions. High definition video can be brought in as HD SDI or analog component. Standard definition video can be brought in as SD SDI, component, composite, or YC video. By default, the resolution of each input in a new session will be set to match whatever the session resolution is, and this is displayed right here in the messaging area. If you start a session at 1080i, then all video inputs will start out as SDI 1080i. You can bring in a different format or resolution on each input, and the TriCaster will up or down convert whatever it is fed to whatever you set the session resolution to on the way out. There are also multiple physical video outputs which can be configured to display different video than program out and at different resolutions and formats. Also know that different formats represent different levels of quality. The best quality input for this TriCaster is an HD SDI input. If working with standard definition, the quality scale starts with the best, which is SD SDI, and then component, and then YC, then the lowest quality is composite. Conversely, a composite signal is one cable, a YC is two cables, and component is three cables. So with analog signals, the more cables used, the better the signal quality. But none of these formats include audio on the same cables. Audio is run separately when using analog video. Both HD SDI and SD SDI use only one cable to deliver the best quality video, and embedded SDI audio can be sent on the same cable. This means one cable for the best audio and video, making SDI the best choice at any resolution. A good rule of thumb to remember is standard definition composite video is fine for a straight video feed. But if you are going to key the input for use in a virtual set or other ME effect, it would be best to feed it component or at least YC. This will make it easier to get a great looking key. Again, SDI produces the best key in HD or SD. Another option is to bring in video signal from an external source with alpha channel. This is usually done by using two signals. One is a key and one is a fill. This can be done in the TriCaster. Close the Camera 1 config panel. Mouse over Camera 2 and click on the gear. Again, you could also right-click and select Configure, or just double-click on the monitor to reach the same configuration panel. Now open the Connection pop-up for Input 2. Notice, at the bottom, you can use any even channel to act as the alpha for its corresponding color channel. If you select Act as Input 1 alpha channel, you can now send the key video to input number 2 and create the transparency, and feed the fill or color information into input number 1. Now you can use input number 1 as the source for a downstream key or overlay, and it uses the alpha information coming in on the other input. Perfect for working with external 2D and 3D graphic systems. Each input also has controls for adjusting the video levels, called a processing amplifier, or proc amp for short. This gives you controls like you have on your television set: brightness, contrast, hue, and saturation. Now, brightness is the overall brightness of the signal, and contrast allows you to control the white and black levels. More contrast means the whites get lighter, and less means the blacks get darker. The hue control adjusts the actual colors, shifting them around the color wheel. Finally, saturation controls the amount of color in the signal. Set this to 0 and the image is black and white. The effects of these controls can also be viewed on the waveform monitor and vectorscopes included with the system. The waveform monitor is used when adjusting brightness and contrast, and the vectorscope shows color information adjusted by the hue and saturation controls. Even though you can adjust the video signals as they come into the TriCaster, it's important to always feed the system the best quality video possible. The adjustments in the TriCaster should be used as tweaks, not total controls. If the input is too bright, try to iris down on the camera before using the proc amp. If the colors are not quite right, try manually white balancing the camera. And on the camera, turn off things like auto white balance and auto gain control. Turning off these things and then controlling them manually allows you to get better control over the camera. It'll stop the camera from trying to compensate when there are things changing like lighting or objects moving towards and away from the camera. Refer to the camera manual to learn these controls on your camera. The general rule of thumb here is garbage in, garbage out. So always feed the TriCaster the best signal you can. There are also cropping controls, allowing you to crop out with a hard line from the left, the right, the top, and the bottom. This is great for removing things from a shot that are not being keyed. This crop is done at the source, meaning anywhere where you use this source, this crop will already be applied. Close the configuration panel for camera 2. There's also a pull-down menu in the upper left corner of the interface. We will refer to this as the TriCaster menu when we're in the live desktop. This TriCaster also includes 8 mix effects buses, or MEs. This menu includes options for the interface, such as MEs follow preview. The ME bus rows can be displayed or hidden on the main UI using this control. Go ahead and make the ME controls visible. There are 8 mix effects buses in this TriCaster, and each ME has its own colored tab and border to make it easier to identify which ME you are currently working with. Also, notice the T-bar for the MEs on the control surface also change colors when different MEs are selected. You can get to the setup controls for any ME by clicking on its tab in the interface. In the Options menu, you can set the MEs to follow whatever is selected on preview. This means whatever you select on preview also selects the corresponding MEs tab to display its setup controls. The definition of an ME and the use of this powerful feature are covered in the ME tutorial video. For now, set it to follow tabs for MEs. Also set tabs follow all delegates, and this will cause the corresponding tab for an ME to be displayed when it is the selected ME on the ME delegate section of the control surface. The next selection is tabs follow preview for all inputs. This will make any item selected in the preview that has a tab, such as a digital disc recorder or graphics player, become visible. From this same pull-down menu, you can share media drives or frame buffers on the network the TriCaster is attached to, giving users external to the TriCaster access to some of its media during a live show. You also have the ability to enable or disable keyboard shortcuts. When using a control surface, sometimes the keyboard shortcuts are redundant and can be hit accidentally during a show, causing undesirable results. This feature does not disable the keyboard for use with title templates. Now you can also lock the mouse to the primary monitor. This TriCaster will allow you to attach a second monitor for use as a configurable multi-viewer. Because of this, you can move the mouse pointer over onto that second multi-viewer for configuration. Once the second multi-viewer is configured, you can lock the mouse to the primary monitor. There's also a selection to enable autoplay out on MEs. Now this is a more advanced subject, and we'll cover that in detail, and it will make a lot more sense once we get into working with MEs and how autoplay works with the media players. This menu also allows you to disable all hotspots or disable hotspots for sources not on program out. These are also advanced topics that will be covered in the hotspot video. The multi-viewer monitor layout in the main user interface can be adjusted. From the Workspace pull-down menu, you can select from 4 preset layouts, A, B, C, or D, either for the main interface or for the secondary multi-viewer. Let's start out by looking at the main user interface. Left-click on a new preset and the monitor layout changes to match that preset. Remember that any monitor in any layout can be configured to show any input or any output of the TriCaster. And these configurations are all locked to the presets. So for instance, in preset A, you can see all of the external video sources and all of the internal sources such as media players and network inputs. Now switch over to preset B. This layout shows only the external inputs. These monitors could be configured to show the 8 mix effects buses. This allows you to see all of the virtual environments at a glance, and they don't have to be selected on preview or program to see them. Switching back to A and then back to B shows you that this configuration has not changed, allowing you to set up custom configurations on each preset. Preset layouts can also be changed. Open the workspace and select preset D. Now open the workspace again and mouse over Load Default below preset D. Now you can select from any of these monitor layouts to be used within preset D. This can be done for any preset. Loading the scopes view into preset D can be useful, allowing access to the waveform monitor and vector scopes during a production. This same functionality is available on the secondary multiviewer. To configure a monitor layout, use these presets from the workspace pull-down. You can also move the mouse over the secondary multiviewer and configure any monitor in any layout. If the mouse will not travel to the second multiviewer, check the TriCaster menu and make sure that Lock Mouse to Primary Monitor is not turned on. Once the multiviewer is configured, it is best to turn on Lock Mouse to Primary Monitor during a live production. This makes it easier to select the presets for DDR2 and Graphics2. In this multiviewer, you have more options for monitor layouts for each preset, including a full screen option. You also have the ability to set the resolution of the secondary multiview monitor output using the pop-up menu found here. If a second monitor is not connected, then this option will be ghosted. Setting the resolution of this output will allow you to match the resolution of external projectors, reducing latency. Now that you have your inputs set up, let's look at the main switcher interface. You can show or hide the ME bus controls with this control. Let's hide them for now. The main production switcher is comprised of 2 rows, a program and a preview row. Let's start with program. Whatever is selected on this row is what's going out of the outputs configured to show program out. This is also by default what is being streamed and being recorded, but these settings can also be configured. You can directly select any input on this row and it will cut to that input on program out. The output of this row is displayed here in the large monitor labeled program. Again, by default, this is what we are broadcasting to the audience. Now, just below the program row is the preview row. This is what will be switched to when the TriCaster does a cut or a transition. Whatever is selected on this row is shown in the large preview monitor. This is not being broadcast. It is just showing the operator what will go out live when a transition or cut is performed. Let's put camera 1 on program and camera 2 on preview. Now, hit the take button just to the right of the switcher rows in the background area. Program out cuts to camera 2 and camera 1 is now on preview. They switched places. Now select camera 3 on preview and take to it. Put camera 2 on preview and take to it. So you are selecting the next shot on preview and then cutting to it. Select camera 1 on preview and hit the auto button next to the take button for the background. This will perform whatever transition is currently selected, which by default is a fade. It is best to always look at a channel on preview and then switch to it, as opposed to just selecting it on program. Without previewing, you are not sure what you are switching to, so previewing helps you avoid mistakes. Notice that the interface is color-coded. The controls for the main switcher bus rows are here on the control surface. Notice the button selected on the program bus is red in the main UI. The input monitor for that selected source is also red, as is the button on the control surface. The selected source on preview, its associated monitor, and its corresponding buttons on the control surface are green. This makes it easy to visually scan the multi-viewer and see what is live and what is currently on preview. The TriCaster 8000 has a variety of outputs for broadcasting your live production. Let's start by looking at and configuring the video outputs from the TriCaster's live desktop. To open the output configuration panel, hit the gear in the lower right corner of the Program Out monitor when the mouse is over that monitor, or just double-click on the Program Out monitor. There are two tabs in this panel. Click on the Output tab. There are 3 rows of video outputs on the back of this TriCaster. They are represented here on the Output configuration panel. Output 1 is configurable to send out any input or output of the TriCaster. It can also send out preview or program clean. A clean feed is one with all downstream overlays removed. The audio can be set for the main or aux audio, as well as color groups set up in the audio mixer, or any incoming signals. This adjusts the audio being sent through the embedded SDI signal for that output's SDI connector. This also selects which audio track will be recorded if this output is selected as the source to be recorded in the ISO quarter. Now, the resolution of this output is locked to the resolution of the session. There's also a pop-up for analog out settings. These are only used in a standard definition production where you need to define how the 3 B and C connectors are used for that output. Component uses all 3, where Composite and YC use 1 or 2 of the connectors. In a high-definition session, these controls are ghosted, as high-definition video is either HD-SDI or component. Something to remember is both SDI and analog connections are active at all times. So, in a high-definition session, output row 1 has 2 outputs active, 1 SDI output and 1 component output. Output row 2 is also configurable in the same way with a few differences. You can adjust the output resolution of this row using this pull-down menu. This allows one TriCaster to output different resolutions at the same time. You can even output high definition and standard definition simultaneously. Note, if you change this to standard definition, the analog output menu becomes active, as these controls are only used with standard definition. You can also configure this output to serve as an alpha channel for input 1. This creates key and fill video streams to send to another switcher or TriCaster for the video with alpha channel. Output row 3 is a little different. This row can be set to output a specific input, such as a camera, or it can be set up to follow output 1 or 2. The audio can be set up to follow the SDI audio output happening on outputs 1 or 2, and this will set the SDI audio output used on output 3. It does not adjust the analog, main, or aux audio outputs on the back of the TriCaster. The fourth output is this HDMI port on the back of the machine. This is a configurable output. It can be set up to output a specific input, such as a camera, or follow the output happening on rows 1 or 2. The audio for this output is also configurable to output master, aux, color groups from the audio mixer, or audio attached to a specific input. Again, this only adjusts the audio that is sent out on the HDMI signal and what is recorded when this output is recorded. It does not adjust the main or aux audio outputs on the back of the TriCaster. Output number 5 is this HDMI connector here, and this is considered a display output. This means it only sends video, no audio. It is configurable to send out individual inputs, but can also send out network inputs, media players, and frame buffers, making it perfect for second screen content like additional video content from external computers, presentations, and things of the sort. It can also be set up to follow the output happening on outputs 1 or 2. You can also set the resolution of this output using this pull down. This allows you to turn off the scaling in an external projector, which can reduce video latency. Output number 6 is the VGA connector, and it's another display output configurable in the same way as the HDMI display output number 5. You also have the ability to configure the resolution of this output to match the resolution of, say, a projector, allowing you to turn off the scaler in the projector for better real-time performance. Output number 7 comes out of the Ethernet port. Now this output allows you to send the program from one TriCaster to another. If both TriCasters are on the same network and you activate this output by clicking here, it will send whatever is configured to output across the network to be brought into another TriCaster via its network inputs. It can be configured in the same way as the display outputs 5 and 6, but it also has audio configuration as it sends both audio and video across the network cable. This audio menu will choose the audio that is sent out with the video across the network cable. Output number 8 is also sent out the Ethernet port. This is the live streaming output. It is configurable in the same way output number 7 was, including audio. TriCaster's GenLock feature allows you to lock its video output to a reference video signal, house sync such as Blackburst, supplied to its GenLock input connector found on the backplate here. TriCaster supports both bi-level and tri-level reference types selectable here. The center frequency setting is applied when a GenLock reference signal is not in use. To adjust the setting, supply color bars to an input and pass TriCaster's video output to a downstream vectorscope. The vectorscope display is completely stable when center frequency is properly adjusted. TriCaster's multi-tiered, always-on-air hardware and software failsafe system provides confidence that short of a complete power failure, the show will go on. The failsafe option here allows the audio and video from input 8 to be routed to output 1 in the case of a catastrophic event, ensuring that video and audio are always being output. In some studio settings, however, more elaborate hardware failsafe systems may be in use. Typically, such systems take over broadcast duties whenever the output signal fails. In such cases, TriCaster's failsafe video pass-through mechanism, which ensures that video output continues even in catastrophic circumstances, can actually prevent the external system from engaging. For this reason, a fail-safe section has been added to the output configuration. It is to provide a switch allowing you to disable the AV pass-through when necessary for the reason just discussed. By default, AV pass-through is off. There is a production clock available in this TriCaster. It is always displayed in the upper right-hand corner. This time of day can be set from the administrator panel and is used as the time code if time code is not externally supplied. This time will be stamped onto any recording. This TriCaster also supports LTC timecode. This timecode is brought in as an audio signal on input 7A. Click on the gear to the right of the clock. Here you can select to use timecode, and if it is present on input 7A, the clock display will use it and the display will turn light blue, indicating timecode is in use. The clock runs in 24-hour mode, but this can cause an issue. For example, a video frame recorded 1 minute before midnight would be assigned the timecode 23:59:59:00, while frames recorded 1 minute later would have the timecode 01:00:00 because we've gone back around on the clock. Using this control, you can subtract 12 hours to avoid running past the 24-hour mark and reverting back to hour 1 within timecode. You can also set up a production clock by setting a start time and an end time to the production. Simply activate them with these buttons. Then left-click and drag on the numbers, or double-click and type in a number. It is important to make sure that the time of day clock is set accurately from the administrator mode. When set, a second clock appears. This clock will be a countdown to the start of the production, and once the production begins, it will become a countdown to the end of the production. The TriCaster has the ability to record the full resolution program output to the media drives attached to the system. This TriCaster also includes isocorder technology, allowing you to record up to 8 channels of high-definition video with audio simultaneously. You can configure what you want to record on each channel and how you want to record it. To configure the recording, click on the gear next to the record button in the dashboard. Let's set up a recording. First, give your recording a base name. The base name will default to the session name, but you can change it. If you start and stop a recording without changing the base name, the recordings will be numbered sequentially along with the base name. Next, choose what you wish to record. Using the pop-up, you can choose to record output 1 or output 2 or any of the 8 video inputs. Remember, the audio to be recorded with each input is selected here, chosen in the video output configuration panel. If you are recording individual inputs, say input 1, it will record the resolution and aspect ratio coming into that input, regardless of the session resolution. If you choose to record output 2, it will record the resolution set up on video output 2 in its configuration panel. This gives you the flexibility to record multiple resolutions at one time. Let's select output as our main recording source. This will record the final output of the production at the session resolution. Next, you can choose a format. This TriCaster defaults to NewTek's own QuickTime format. This format is compatible with most nonlinear editors with no conversion. Take the files recorded by the TriCaster directly to Final Cut, Premiere, Avid Media Composer, or After Effects. There's also an MPEG-2 option, an AVI option, and an H.264 codec for web to create smaller, easier to transfer files, and MP3 audio-only recording as well. Only one H.264 stream can be recorded at a time during a production. Trying to set up a second one will cause an error to appear. Next, you can select where you want to record the video. This must be one of the internal media drives or an eSATA drive connected to the eSATA ports on the back of the machine. Remember, USB drives are not fast enough to support video recording or playback. Only 2 streams of video should be recorded per media drive. The default 2 terabyte media drive can hold approximately 50 hours of 1080i video. This means 25 hours if you're recording 2 streams on one drive. If you try to record more than 2 streams to a single drive, you will get a warning message telling you that you should not do this. There are also external codecs available for both Macs and PCs that allow any application to export files for the TriCaster. You can even export clips with Alpha Channel for use as motion graphic overlays. These codecs are available on the My Downloads section of the NewTek registration site. You can also check the Add to Playlist button, and when you stop the recording process, the clip will show up in the DDR you have chosen. Use the gear to choose the DDR. This can be very useful when you want to instantly review what you've just recorded. You can also check the Add to Share Queue button, and when you stop the recording process, that clip will show up in the Share Queue, ready to be uploaded to your favorite social media site. Simply use the gear to choose where you want it to be uploaded. You can even set it up to auto-upload clips as they are available. Remember, the Share feature must also be configured on the session or home page before being able to use this feature in a live production. To set up additional channels to record, turn on the secondary sources. Now you can set up 7 more channels to record. To set up a new channel to record, hit the Add Source button. Just make sure that you are only recording a maximum of 2 channels per media drive. If you try to set up more than that, you'll get a warning. Secondary sources are only recorded and cannot be automatically sent to a DDR or to the Share Queue. You can delete secondary sources by using the X to the left of the source. Once you have some set up, you can enable or disable all of them without affecting the setup of any of the channels using this control. if you are setting up to record individual sources, if you rename the monitors for the source in the switcher, then the recording will be labeled with that same name. This is very handy for organizing your clips for editing. Once everything is configured, close the record panel. To start the recording, simply hit the record button on the interface. To start the recording process from the control surface, hit this record button. You will see the timecode numbers start to roll. Now your selected sources are being recorded. We are recording program out, so let's do some cuts and fades. To stop the recording from the control surface, hit the control button along with the record button. This qualifier key is added to prevent accidentally stopping the recording during a live production. You can also click the record button on the user interface to stop the recording. Notice since we had Add to DDR playlist selected that as soon as we hit the record button to stop the recording process, that clip is now ready for use in the DDR. You can now look at your clip, scrub through it, and see everything that you recorded. While in a live production, you have the ability to grab still images from program out. To configure the grabber, click on the gear next to the grab button in the dashboard. Like the record panel, you can give the images a base name and they will be sequentially numbered along with that name. The images are saved as JPEGs. You can also choose to deinterlace an image. If you are working with an interlaced format like 1080i or standard definition at 480i, the I stands for interlaced. That means the image is made up of two fields. If there's a lot of motion when the image is captured, the resulting still can look jittery. To remove the jitter from these images, use the deinterlace function. This is not needed when working with progressive formats like 720p, where the P stands for progressive. You can set the grab button to grab a still from all 8 inputs at once. This is handy for creating a collection of stills to choose from to upload to social media or to be used in editing. You can also configure the grabber to ignore any inputs that are black. If you have Add to Playlist selected and you have Capture Stills from all inputs selected, only Program Out will show up in the media player, but all the stills were captured. They are all available from the media browser when you try to add content to a media player. Besides that, the Add to Playlist and Add to Share Queue features are here, and they work the same as they did in the recorder. Now, once everything is configured for your session, you can exit the live desktop to save all of the session parameters. Simply click here to exit to the Sessions page. From here, you can exit to the Home page. Now you have access to all the sessions on the system. Sessions can be renamed on the home page by right-clicking on it and selecting Rename. You also have the option to delete a session, but be careful, as this will also delete any media associated with that session, and this may be unrecoverable. Make sure to back up any session with all of its content before you delete it. To back up a session, go to its Sessions page. Then select Backup Session. You have two options here. Backup without importing will back up the session and any of the content that you imported before the session. If you want to back up everything that was used, including content that you used from other sessions or content that was not imported, choose the Import and Backup option. Then select the location to store the backup. This can be any drive on the system, including USB drives. Because the backup is not real-time playback or recording, it can be used. Backing up the session will produce two things: a zip file with the session name and a folder with the session name. Both of these are needed to restore the session. They need to be in the same folder or in the root of the same drive. It creates a zip file with the session info and a folder with all of the session content. Once a session is backed up, it can be restored to any media drive. Go to the home page. Under each drive, there is an option to restore backup. Simply click on this and navigate and select the zip file with the session information from your backup. It will be restored to that drive with all of its content as long as it was backed up with all of its content. One side note, if you back up a session that was created on the D drive and restore it to an E drive, The session will load, but the content will be ghosted. That's because it's looking for the content on the D drive, not the E drive. To make this session load properly, you will have to exit to Windows and change the drive letter to E. Let's go back to the Open icon and select 8000 Training, and then go back to the live desktop.